So when it comes to Houston's climate change preparedness, I'm going to also focus on flooding. So Houston is part of the C40 urban flooding network, which is aimed at holistic water management, monitoring urban flooding, flood response, and flood reduction. And historically, Houston has come under some criticism regarding their flood response, and even in just their ability to go after flood reduction. And a lot of this has to do with their urban sprawl and large housing developments being built in or near reservoirs. And Houston is, known for their prairies, which end up being natural water drainage sources for them. But the more that they're building on or close to these lands, it's going to destroy the ecosystem and they're going to be ineffective. Houston is doing, a few things to kind of combat this flooding. And I'm just going to name a few projects and I'll put the links in the discussion post. But the Brays Bayou Bridge Project is one of them. The Memorial Park Conservancy Land Bridge and Prairie Project is a good project, basically restoring some of their prairies. But, to think about it in different ways, which is what I'm aiming to do, is that Houston is a national leader in federally funded home buyouts. A lot of these buyouts are stemming from natural disasters such as hurricanes, and they're federal funds or they're locally granted funds that allow people's homes to be bought out if they're in a high-risk area, and they're to be demolished, and then they're going to be green space, which is all great. But unless investors get to them first, then that's never going to happen. And so when I think about the investors, I looked into, Houston's 2017 physical budget. And what I found was that 45.5% of the budget, which is roughly $1.3 million, came from property taxes. That's okay. But when you look at it, the industrial district, which is probably one of the biggest offenders in Houston when it comes to environmental damage, environmental hazards in general, the taxes that come from the industrial district only amount to 0.72%, which is $18,000. So this really comes from Texas being one of the only states without a personal state or corporate tax, basically meaning, doing business in Texas comes at a low cost. So of course, they're going to have big industries like the energy industry. So, when it comes to the overall level of preparedness that Houston has, I would say they're at a 6. Because they have a lot of positive change coming, but there is also still a lot of institutional changes that needs to happen in order for Houston to be set up for success. One of them being is where their money is coming from. The more that they allow for industrial companies to come in, create jobs, which is great, but if they're hazardous and they're giving them kind of like a green light to come in with zero taxes, but then their property taxes are high, they're going to allow for more developments. So you kind of get that catch-22 there. So basically, what I believe is that until Houston and Texas prioritize taxing industrial and energy industry and not relying on property tax as a major funder, they're going to continue to see overdevelopment, which is ultimately going to put their ecosystems, their natural ecosystems, at risk, which is going to affect how they combat climate change. So I find it interesting. I'll put everything that I looked at in the chat, in the discussion post, so that you guys can kind of look at it as well. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking right now.